Oh boy. You guys ready? Let's just jump into it.
Ready when you are, man. I'm ready to party
Sorry,
tonight.
late. Cool. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We are presented by Noble Ice Vineyards. Thank you so much for joining us for the Darbecue version of tonight's show, as titled by my friend who is here, Matt Baker. Matt, how's it going? Is Darbecue your favorite? It seems like it's your favorite.
I think it is. I think I've kind of dove full in on that. I personally like river related Derby names, the Big Muddy Derby, things like that. But given the club's social media things with the barbecue sauce this year, I thought that was a good touch, and I just generally like arguing about barbecue between the two cities. I think it's fun.
It is fun. Stu Holgren is here to join us as well. Stu, what is your opinion on Derby names?
No, I like Darbecue. I especially like it just because I know it upsets them so much over there in Kansas City because they don't think that we hold a candle to them in barbecue. So to put ourselves on equal footing, which I think our best barbecue here can stand up to some of their best over there. So I think it hits them in their ego, and for that reason, I like it.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of barbecue soccer crossover when it comes to hitting of egos and people having pride in the new thing versus the old thing versus the new thing that used to be an old thing. It goes around in circles. As long as we have the breath to argue it, we will be doing so. So this is a perfect rivalry. Stuart, you were excited because we're getting Twellman on the call for this game. And even though these teams are both kind of at the bottom of the table, we're still getting good billing. So I mean,
not the very bottom, at least.
No, not the very bottom. You're right. But it's still important to MLS. They recognize that this is a big deal.
That's one of my favorite things is that it doesn't matter we're already at a spot where it doesn't matter our place in the standings for this rivalry to be a big deal for MLS, for them to focus on us no matter what else is going on around the league, playoff battles or not.
Indeed. All right. Got some good quotes this week from players and a lot of fun stuff with, I forgot to look this up. What is the sauce thing they're doing this week? I really enjoyed the pictures of Leuven in the backyard.
Sauce
grilling.
City. Yeah, Sauce City. They've got merchandise. They've got Leuven in a photo shoot. I mean, everybody's swooning over him at this point.
Yes, it was very well done. I think Peter Wood is the one who exclaimed, what did he compare it to? He compared wearing all white while eating a pork steak is akin to having an iPhone without a case. I mean, that is not something I'm going to attempt, wearing all white, eating barbecue.
But props to those who do attempt it.
It looks good in a photo shoot, I will say that. But one of my, lots of good quotes from this match from this presser this week. Matt, please take it from me before I stumble over my words again.
No, and I wasn't able to make it, so I'm relying on Justin Horniker, our friend who writes for STL Magazine, to provide this to us. Roman Berkey summed it up. And in the past, it's been Indiana Vasilev who's really set the tone for certain things. Last year, I think he had the infamous, we know our fans don't like them, and so we don't like them type of a thing. And this year, with everything else going on, it's Roman Berkey, the captain, stepping up in the couple days before the match saying, quote, "I can compare this to when I was at Dortmund and we played Schalke. Beating Schalke was like winning a championship. So this weekend, I don't care about the rest of the season. We just want to beat Kansas." And if that doesn't get you fired up, knowing that's the attitude your captain has, saying, we don't care what's been going on, we don't care what's to come, we just want to beat this team that we know our fans hate. And that's what they're taking on their shoulders. They're ingraining the new guys in this derby, and they're going to fight for the fans.
Stu, so I don't care about this weekend. I don't care about all right. So this weekend, I don't care about the rest of the season. We just want to beat Kansas. Stu, that spoke to me. I'm sure you have some thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love that attitude from Berkey. If you want to be objective and take a step back and say, oh yeah, it's two teams that are near the bottom of the table that are playing each other, won't make the playoffs. But no, it means more. We fans don't like Kansas. Players don't like Kansas. I mean, I think Indy said also we don't like them and they don't like us. So yeah, I mean it is a championship in some level. I mean, you if nothing else, you always want to finish above your rival, and if we have the chance to knock them out officially of the playoffs, I believe we're still both officially hanging in there at least until some other results roll in.
They're actually officially eliminated already. So they have even less to fight. Yeah. They've played one extra match with us, and that's the reason. We're tied on points, like we'll talk about in a minute, but they've already been eliminated from the playoffs. So I think this is much more of a dogfight, and just it's going to get a little bit rough around the edges, as John Hackworth said earlier this week, because it's one of those derbies, and neither team really has standing to fight for. They don't have to protect anything. So it's going to be a little more wild in my eyes, but it also has a lot of familiarity to it. Stu and I were talking before we recorded that this is going to be the 8th match between these two teams in 2 years. And Berkey, comparing this to Dortmund and Schalke, I mean, they don't play each other that often. You know, there's a little bit more build up to these, but at the same time, I don't view this in the sense at this point of we've been playing them so many times and it's getting old already. I view this in context of where our season is right now, where not only are we 2-3-3 all time against them, including the playoffs. So we don't have a winning record against them at this point in time. This would get us to 500 against them in all aspects. But I just think we have a lot of aggression and anger to take out on how this season has gone. And Berkey talking about he doesn't care about the rest of the season. He just wants to beat Kansas. I feel like this is going to be a pent up frustration release of a game. I think this team is going to take everything that they've had before this, everything that they wish they would be having after this, and just throw it all out there. Leave it all out there. Fight as hard as they possibly can be. Fouling, I would expect a lot of fouling. I'd expect a lot of moments where players are going to get into each other's faces. It's going to be physical. It's going to be gritty, tough, dirty. And this is what St. Louis needs. In City Park, I think St. Louis really needs to make this 8th match count against SKC in 2 years. We're not going to have a series of playoff matches. We're not going to have anything left to come with SKC. No potentialities. You know, we've got 4 more matches, and in all likelihood, our season is going to be over too. Theirs will for sure be over after 3 more games. And so you just want to have that moral victory at the end of the day. You want to not just stomp them because they're your rival, but you don't want to let them have the opportunity, even no matter if it's technically incorrect or not, to say we knocked you out of the playoffs, or we just came off the US Open Cup match on Wednesday playing 120 minutes and we can come into your park 3 days later and beat you. There's a lot riding on this game from that contextual regards that I think St. Louis and the players know about, and they're not going to roll over for this.
Yeah, did you go into, looks like you have a few more notes about the last time we played each other. And, you know, I think a lot about the playoff game, the final playoff game, and how disgusting that was versus how a lot of these other games have gone. Been a lot more exciting, but go ahead.
Honestly, the playoffs were gross last year. I think that was the most frustrating way to end a season possible, no matter if you finish first. So I look at this year and what we've done, and we've tied them twice, 3-3, 1-1. I mean, they've been dogfights. And the other thing with this is, yeah, it's St. Louis versus SKC on these, but even this last game that we played against them right before Leagues Cup was a pretty different team. Looking at that last game against SKC just before Leagues Cup, it was Nukvi Thorson who scored the goal. Cedric Toyshirt had just made his debut. That was his first game. We were without Marcel Hartl. We were without Klaus and Alm with injury. We hadn't yet got Jonas Horn or Henry Kessler in. JGR made a cameo, I believe, at the end of the game. But you're talking about this last match being Tim Parker's last MLS match for St. Louis. You're talking about a starting lineup that consisted of Nukvi Thorson, Johnny Klein, Akil Watts, Jabulu Blom, and Jay Reed. All of those players started in this SKC match. So yes, it is. There's a lot of familiarity with the head coaches. John Hackworth obviously has been around regardless of his status as the head coach this entire time. So there's familiarity abounds in the regards of the teams know each other, the styles, how the teams will come out. But individually, this is a vastly different St. Louis team than what Sporting has been playing in the past. They might have Klaus leading the line, but everything underneath Klaus is going to be different compared to the last time they played him. And I think that's a benefit, massive benefit for St. Louis. We'll talk about health here in a little bit. So some of those might be 50-50 shots, but I just think compared to even a month or two ago, just over 2 months ago, the last time we played SKC, this is a massively different St. Louis team.
Stuart, any thoughts on like what has, any thoughts on what St. Louis versus KC has been in the past for you, or maybe even a little bit of what you'd like to see at City Park, not on the field necessarily, but like between this rivalry for you?
Well, it's going to be good, even great weather for the match on Saturday. I think kickoff time, it's going to be around 74, 75 degrees, scattered showers. It's really good weather. Like Matt said, I think it's going to be chippy. I think you want to take it to Sporting right off the bat. I know we like to attack the north end, get that extra jump in the first half. Now, I've disagreed with that at times, but I think that's going to be the right take on this match. Get ahead of Sporting early, hold the lead. They're going to wear down as the match goes on because, as we'll get into later, they just came off an absolutely grueling match last night. So no, I'm excited. I mean, I go to Kansas City a lot, so I'm very familiar with that city. For the most part, I love that city, but I absolutely hate their sports teams. And every time I get a chance to beat them, I just absolutely love it. So nothing will make me happier than a win on Saturday. So when I'm in KC in 2 weeks next time, I can kind of proudly wear my city kit walking around Nelson Atkins or wherever I am. Hopefully get a few looks, maybe some averted looks of shame from Sporting fans because we beat them 7-1 2 weeks before. But now I'm really excited about this, and I hope every City fan out there is just really excited about what's going to happen on Saturday.
I actually have a bit of a secret. I don't know if I've shared this on Flyover Footy before. Maybe I have. Probably I have. But I am a bit of a half-breed. Have I told you guys that my dad is from Kansas City and my mom is from St. Louis? So I've got a little
news to me.
Yeah, I haven't told you guys that. So, I grew up a Chiefs fan. So that worked out well considering how the Rams ended up. So that ended up not being a problem. But, never really rooted for SKC anyway, so this has been very simple.
That's actually really funny. I lived in KC for like 3 years, right out of college. So it's kind of hilarious that we all have links. Yeah, little links to KC.
Yeah, and I mean, so that means when we say like barbecue here holds up, like we kind of know, or at least we have experience. We're not speaking out of turn, right?
Gives us a little bit of street cred in that conversation, I feel.
Kind of, yeah, maybe so. But Matt, Stuart was mentioning the grueling match that SKC is coming out of, so we can tie that back in and start talking about what we might be looking at with SKC coming to St. Louis this week.
A tired group, that's for sure. I don't really feel like getting into the nitty gritty of the goals and the blow by blows, but SKC lost Wednesday night 3-1 in the U.S. Open Cup final against LAFC in LA. Match went into extra time. They played 120 minutes. The game was basically over a little bit before that. I think LAFC went into halftime of extra time up 2-1, if I recall. But you're talking about a lot of minutes put in by SKC from their starters. Notably, both center backs, Robert Volader and Robert Castellanos, right back Kyrie Shelton, right winger Johnny Russell, and striker Alan Polito all played 120 minutes. Woo. That's massive. I mean, LAFC did us some favors by stretching this game out. And those are key players. Johnny Russell he was laboring there towards the end. I cannot believe he stayed in that game for 120 minutes. Russell and Polito going 120 minutes, along with Kyrie Shelton, huge. That's massive, and massive implications for Saturday. Their center attacking mid, Eric Tommy, went 112 minutes. Defensive midfielders, because they had kind of a double pivot going on. Jake Davis was one of those, moved up. Zorhan Basong both went 105 minutes. So they both went to extra time, or the halftime of extra time. And left winger Daniel Shallowy and left back Logan Ndembe both went 82 minutes. That in and of itself, just those two, Shallowy and Ndembe, going 82. That would be a lot normally, but this is a core group of players who went above and beyond 90 minutes. And so I look to the other group, the ones who Peter Vermes brought off the bench, like striker / attacking mid Willie Agata, Memo Rodriguez, one of their defensive midfielders, and Remy Walter, all subbing in later. So I feel those guys are going to be strong candidates to start. You can't sit all of Russell, Polito, Eric, Tommy, and Daniel Shallowy. So you're going to have some tired legs going out there no matter who you roll. And it wasn't an overly effective SKC team. It was kind of par for the course for how this team has been. In the U.S. Open Cup, they didn't really face much competition to get to the final. They had a pretty cakewalk of path, but this SKC team that played LAFC was pretty par for the course for how their MLS run has been this year. I saw a stat on the Apple TV broadcast through 105 minutes in that match. SKC had 0.74 XG on 12 shots, averaging 0.06 XG per shot. And we use like 0.1 per shot as a pretty good indicator of, is this quality or not? That's kind of where the line begins. Very poor quality overall. But like I said, that's kind of par for the course for how this team has been. So they didn't go above and beyond themselves. They played a rather typical SKC game. It's just going to cost them a little bit with 120 minutes for those players. And I think the 3 days rest is, they can bounce back. These are professional athletes, but you would look to, even if Johnny Russell can start, even if Alan Polito can start, I would be hard pressed to bet that they would go a full 90. So you're seeing opportunity in the back half of this game, whereas there might be a little more even keeled in the front part of the game at the beginning. St. Louis has done a good job of getting off on the front foot, with Cedric Toyshirt scoring 2 goals in the first 4 minutes in the past 2 games. But I see the back half of this game, once SKC's legs are a little tired, once they're having to sub out their quality players, that's where the opportunity is going to strike for St. Louis because of this U.S. Open Cup game.
Yep, especially their style of play. I mean, trying hard, it seems to be one of their main keys to their game every single week. I know Vermes expects it. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about a rivalry game against SKC. Matt, let's talk a little bit more about St. Louis and kind of give us a clue as to where St. Louis and Kansas City stand right now.
Yeah, both these teams come in with SKC's been eliminated from the playoffs, like I said, and St. Louis is basically towing the line. They no longer control their own destiny on this. So St. Louis could still win out and not make the playoffs at this point. It's all riding on Minnesota United at this point in time. They play Colorado this weekend. So if Minnesota gets 1 point, then St. Louis is eliminated, no matter what happens with St. Louis. So that's why I mentioned earlier that it would be technically inaccurate for SKC to say that if they beat us, they would eliminate us. It's not as clear cut as that. But both of these teams come in tied 12th in the West. On points, they are tied. SKC currently holds the tiebreaker as far as the standings go because the next tiebreaker is wins. And so they have 8 wins compared to our 6. St. Louis has a 6-11-13 record with 31 points in 30 games, minus 14 goal differential with 43 goals scored, 57 goals allowed in that 30 games. Since Leagues Cup, it's kind of been up and down. Santi and I were talking earlier in the week about how there haven't really had that massive upswing that we had hoped for with the new arrivals. The quality, I feel, has been overall better on the offensive side. The attack has been quality, but we've had some holes defensively and really haven't been able to shore up how to hold leads regularly. And so since Leagues Cup, you had that win last week against San Jose, which was, hooray, our first away win of the entire season. We lost the week prior, Minnesota, drew against New England, beat the Galaxy, and drew against Portland. So it's pretty up and down for St. Louis. I think they're looking to take that San Jose Earthquake game and build momentum into, this biggest match left on the schedule. And SKC on the other side, they played 31 games. They have 31 points in 31 games with an 8-16-7 record. So they have a lot more losses than St. Louis, but they've got more wins, less draws. They have a -9 goal differential, so a little better than St. Louis's. 49 goals scored, 58 goals against. So they have 6 more goals scored and 1 more goals allowed through 1 additional game. and they are 2-10-3 on the road. So they're not a good road team at all. Recently, we mentioned their 3-1 U.S. Open Cup loss against LAFC. In MLS play since Leagues Cup, Sporting KC has kind of been on the same path. They're not awful, but at the same time, they have not been able to string anything together. Since Leagues Cup, they beat Orlando 3-0 at home to kick off their post-Leagues Cup. They drew New York Red Bulls away 1-1. They lost to Seattle 2-0. They won 4-1 at home against Colorado, a playoff team. And then they lost at home last week to Minnesota. So it's 2-1 for them. But some of their wins, they've scored buckets of goals. And so I counted that no SKC win has been with less than 2 goals this year. So if they score goals, they tend to win of the games that, they have pretty close. 3 of their last five wins have been by 2 goals or more. So if they're going to win, they're going to win by a couple lately, odds are. And if they score a lot, then they tend to win.
Stuart, where we stand and where we are in the standing, St. Louis, and where SKC is, the opportunity for them to claim, Matt mentioned that there's a lot more to it than this, but if they were to beat St. Louis, and St. Louis doesn't, officially doesn't make the playoffs that week, that would be a bit of a thing, right? It's nice that we've clinched not getting the wooden spoon, which is a statement in itself, I suppose, but I don't know. Any thoughts on that, on where St. Louis is and how you feel as a St. Louis fan going into this game, being where we are?
Well, I think we're still kind of looking at, like Matt said, quality's been on an uptick since Leagues Cup.
Yeah.
The defense is still getting sorted out, and I think that's going to be a project for the offseason and for Hack or whoever the coach is for next season. There's optimism, but got to be a little nervous about playing your rival. You want to get up for it, and you want to beat them. Just can't lose to Kansas. Just can't lose to Kansas. That's all I care about right now. The rest of the games of the season are, it'd be fun to beat LAFC away, win at Houston, and sentimentally, I'm originally from Minnesota, so I'd love to beat the Loons away as well. I can text my cousins and kind of rub it in their face, but no, I gotta be an optimist on this one, because Sporting fans are definitely not optimistic about this one.
Yeah, fair. Rightfully so. It is nice. You mentioned in there that we do have reason to be optimistic, so I'm excited about that, and that is where my brain kind of stays on right now. At the end of the season, I'm glad you went there with it, Matt. For a second I thought you forgot to put this in the notes, and I looked it up on X just to make sure we had it ready. It hasn't been a story lately, the health of the team, but it is a little bit more this week than the previous 2 or 3.
Yeah, I tried to bake it into this section where it's a little more, it flows a little better with the whole topic of the preview as opposed to just talking about it right from the jump. Player health and availability. I feel it hasn't been as much under the microscope now because everybody's kind of resigned themselves to we're not going to make the playoffs. And so this is just my feeling that I don't feel that it's gotten a whole lot of attention compared to a month or 2 ago.
Well, but it's been pretty good too. I mean, compared to what we've been dealing with all season.
Yeah.
Only
I guess
having
I just mean
Celio and Ostrock out.
It has.
That
I guess I just mean this
about
week.
as good as we could get it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. No, I just feel I've been this week since Tuesday or so.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been a few comments about Durkin, but I honestly, so I'll just start off with Chris Durkin. If you haven't listened to the midweek pod that I put out a couple days ago, listen to that. John Hackworth, I put in his direct quote on, and listen, it's direct from John Hackworth, put in his audio and everything on Chris Durkin. And so I feel there's a little of a misunderstanding about Chris Durkin this past week against San Jose. Hackworth had talked before the game. He was dealing with knee inflammation. Wasn't expecting to start. He started. He had to come out after like a quarter of the game. And now he's got knee inflammation that won't go away. So I think listen to Hackworth on that pod because he explains it extremely well and clarifies the difference between Durkin's injury and the knee inflammation and somebody like Edu Leuven, who is a re-injury risk with what his hamstring that he was dealing with and why he didn't travel. So that I'll just say that there's a difference of what Durkin's dealing with. But if you're not familiar, Chris Durkin is dealing with knee inflammation, and he's likely out this weekend. He missed practice all week, unlikely to play. Hackworth said the knee inflammation just won't go away right now. And so a knee inflammation, Hackworth likened it to a bone bruise. And so it's just swelling like that, and it won't go away. So it had gone away before San Jose. He took a knock, which I feel like we could play a drinking game out of the words took a knock, and during the game this past weekend, and that's kind of what was the impetus of this, in the same spot, unfortunately. Now, other injury news or things that kind of have popped up, Cedric Toyshirt is 50-50 to play per John Hackworth with his knee too. He was wearing a brace at training this week, and from watching him a little bit on Tuesday, he did seem to be noticeably hindered, or at least didn't look 100% with his cuts and movements. Now, it was just for a few minutes that I saw that at training, and I didn't see him on Thursday, so I don't know how he's been progressing, but Hackworth calling him 50-50 is a little alarming for Cedric Toyshirt. We know he's played a lot since he's arrived, and if Hackworth did say it was up to him, he'd be playing. So they're monitoring that, and they're going to make that call. Somebody who is likely, again, out for this weekend, unfortunately, and gosh, just so unfortunate for this particular game, is Indiana Vassilev. Vassilev is in concussion protocol after taking a knock in training on Wednesday. We don't know what exactly happened, but some kind of obvious head contact, and Vassilev is in concussion protocol as of Thursday, which that I cannot see him playing on Saturday. You remember Henry Kessler, who was in concussion protocol for a few days. You have tests that you have to clear. I don't know. Time's not on his side. I'll just say that. If you enter concussion protocol on a Wednesday, time's not on your side to play on Saturday. But we'll see. You never know. We've seen stranger things. And so Vassilev, if he passes all the tests, could be available. If not, that's why. Giannis Horn appears likely. He is practicing again. He wasn't practicing on Tuesday. He wasn't really mentioned by Hackworth on Thursday that I saw. And Tuesday, Hackworth said load management. He just put in a lot of minutes, a lot of stress, and they're dealing with that. Horn obviously came out against San Jose last weekend in the first half, and so they have been managing that, and he seems like he's good to go. A couple other players that are good to go as well, Edu Leuven and Henry Kessler. Kessler returned to training this week after clearing concussion protocol. Edu Leuven, who is dealing with that hamstring issue, Hackworth said should be good to go. And thankfully, he should be 100% as well. He ramped up this week. One other note that I mentioned on our midweek pod, Marcel Hartl. Hartl hasn't really been practicing with the team. And he told us that it kind of kills him. He hates not practicing, but he's dealing with this thing on his toe, this swelling that's just really uncomfortable. And it's not something that almost kind of like Durkin in that way, where it's not something where he's a re-injury risk, but they manage it, they rest it, they medicate it throughout the week, and then he's good to go for the game, even if he's dealing with a little bit of pain. So it sounded like from Hartl talking to us on Tuesday that he has been dealing with some pain even during the game, but they're able to manage it, and then they rest, regen, and recover during the week. Kind of notable, though, that he hasn't been practicing with the team because of that. So yeah, dealing with a lot. Chris Durkin likely out. Indiana Vassilev, concussion protocol. Cedric Toyshirt, 50-50 to go. Horn, Leuven, Kessler, Hartl all seem good to go. So it's a little bit, and Klaus and Alm good to go.
With Leuven, it feels like all season it's been like there's a knock, he's good, he's not good. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But with Leuven, I feel like we got a little peek behind where seemingly there's some test on what they've done throughout the season. Maybe they can test certain things about his muscles themselves, but the fact that they were able to read into a possible injury and avoid it, if they avoid it for the rest of the season, I think that's like something we can point to and applaud our health staff for maybe avoiding something like that. So that's nice to hear, and something we should definitely notice, because we don't always get to appreciate those folks. We get to see the injury and wonder what's going on. It's kind of, I think, how I tend to go. Matt, let's go to this next spot where we have, I know you put out a poll, so I'd like you to kind of mention what the poll results were, and I'd like to hear Stu kind of comment on position battles. What is the biggest position battle in St. Louis City right now?
Yeah, with the playoffs seemingly out of reach, you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on SKC. And with that, you're building up some of these positional battles that we've seen. So I have 3 spots that I'm watching kind of carefully to see what happens. I'm also having a couple assumptions here. The assumptions were Indiana Vasilev's not going to play, Chris Durkin's not going to play, and that Joachim Nilsson, there's not a battle going on there. If Nilsson's healthy enough, he's starting with Kessler. If he's not healthy, it's going to be Hebert. That's not a battle to me. The battles are the striker right mid role between Betcher, Alm, and Thorson. Central defensive midfield, without Chris Durkin, you're looking at Jake Girdwood-Reich or Akil Watts. And right back, you're looking at Thomas Totland and Jake Nerwinski. And the voting online was pretty, and the vote was for which are you most interested in seeing, not who do you think will start, although I did get some comments on that, which I really appreciate the feedback. And it does seem kind of universal on who people want to see start. But who are they most interested in? It was almost a split between Betcher, Alm, Thor, and JGR and Akil Watts. And that was not too surprising, but the JGR Akil Watts won out. And in the comments with that, a lot of people said, I'll say Jeremy Moore, I'll call him out because he epitomized, I think, everybody's thought. I'd go Alm, JGR, Totland. JGR can sit back and almost give a back three look to release the fullbacks into the attack, gives the most attacking options with the inverted wingers and wide fullbacks, but also keeps the lines connected better than when we've seen the back five. And I don't think we'll run a back five, even if we did last time out. Hackworth kind of alluded to that without actually saying he's not going to do a back five again. One thing on the right back is Hackworth said that the positional battle, they're battling for the right back spot. It's for right back. It's not for running Jake Nerwinski out as a right center back and then Totland as a right wing back. That's not what he's looking at. He's looking at those two players in this right back role. And a lot of people kind of were asking why that's a battle or what's wrong with Totland. That's been the story over the past few weeks. And nothing's wrong with Thomas Totland. Thomas Totland didn't do anything wrong. It's just Nerwinski has had better trainings. He had a better game against the Galaxy, which earned him a few other games to start. And now Thomas Totland came back, and Hackworth said he had the best defensive game of his season. So it's a true battle between those two at right back. And at the end of the season, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You want those two to push each other. The second striker or the striker right mid, the overwhelming choice is Rasmus Alm. And there's one comment in here, Alm, JGR, Totland. It's a trick question because Hartle's actually going to be a center mid with Leuven, which I would prefer not to, but that could, I suppose, end up happening. I do like Alm out there. I liked what he offered at the beginning of this previous game, and I think he is the best skilled player out of those three and would probably deserve to start in that way. But JGR and Akil, I like the results of that one winning out because it didn't go according to what we thought this past week. Not only did Durkin start, but it was Akil Watts who came in for him when he needed it in the first half. JGR was, I guess, kind of assumed or hyped up as would be the assumed next man up behind him, but it was Akil Watts. And the best that I really have to think on that is Hackworth was pretty specific about protecting JGR, not overexposing him, not putting too much pressure on him, being a 19, 20-year-old. And I can understand that to an extent, but he's had plenty of time to get acclimated to the system. He's in his cameo roles in his 45-minute appearance the other week. I thought he did fine. I say give him a run out in a low-pressure situation like not making the playoffs, but at the same time, this isn't exactly a low-pressure situation of a game. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what you guys think about JGR and Akil because I could honestly make an argument both ways based on what I've seen from Hackworth.
Very quickly, I just want to say that when Akil went in, I didn't even think about this at the time, but protecting JGR makes a lot of sense. It was a 4-1-4-1, so it was a single pivot. So that one player had a lot of responsibility. That's not something you want to put on a young player who hasn't been there very long. Akil is a seasoned player. He's played that position a lot. He knows it probably better. Hackworth knows he can handle it because through experience together. So that's interesting. I don't foresee this weekend being a single pivot. It could be. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. But if it's a double pivot with Leuven, putting someone like JGR next to him, to me, isn't very risky. I mean, Perez did it tons last season. So if he can handle it, I think JGR could. I just wanted to mention that because you made a great point about being able to handle the load. And it just occurred to me as you were saying that. Stuart, I'd love to hear your favorite battle or maybe what you think is the most important and give us your stump speech based on the arguments there.
Stump speech, 30-minute or 30-second elevator.
Get out your soapbox.
No, I don't know if I have a soapbox on any of these. But second striker, I do think Alm's he's a straw that stirs the drink. I really, really like what he brings when he's out there, different gravy. So I like Alm. In fact, I like Betcher off the bench. He's a Kansas kid, technically, I guess. Topeka, but he grew up in Connecticut, I think. But most interesting to me will be Akil versus JGR, and I think JGR is going to get the start. But Akil is Hackworth's guy. I mean, he played under Hackworth in Louisville City. He played for Hackworth with the U.S. Youth National Team U17s. So Hackworth and Watts are very familiar with each other, and it's obvious that Hack trusts Akil, and I think Akil is capable of stepping up and being that man in that situation. So I'd be comfortable with either of them, but I'm more curious about seeing JGR out there.
Well said. I enjoyed that. Matt, we have a little bit of time here, and I'd like you to fit in whatever you choose to fit in stats-wise. You have probably 4 times that amount of time worth of material, but we'll let you kind of talk here, and then we'll do our lineups at the end.
Well, if you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, thank you, but also tune into our podcast because we're going to have a little bit more on SKC that's spilling over into the wind down. I'll tease that right now. I know we all know how KC plays. We know how SKC comes out. They like to possess the ball. They like to play short passes. They like to connect multiple times to draw the defense into different uncomfortable spaces. They will take a lot of shots, but they have very low quality of shots. They're the opposite of St. Louis in quite a bit of ways. They have a greater than 50% possession number. They actually outperform their expected goals quite a bit, even if they have less goals actual scored. So that tells you the quality right there. One of the things that I think is going to be a key to this game is for St. Louis to be more willing to press. And this isn't just with SKC, because SKC likes to spend a lot of time in their attacking half, possessing the ball. They don't make quick runs with it. So I think this is going to be an interesting kind of case study in how St. Louis employs their press. Recently, in the past few games under John Hackworth, it's been more of a mid-block, an aggressive mid-block, as opposed to an all-out high press. So that's been interesting to watch. And Hackworth's almost encouraged them to press, even as their overall height of the defensive actions continues to be middling or lower than a Bradley Carnell coach team. It's going to be important. Another key to the game for me is that St. Louis absorbs pressure and is clinical on the counter. SKC will dominate, like I said, the ball in their attacking half. And in particular, they want to make St. Louis uncomfortable in their higher up position. So as St. Louis drops back deep, not like San Jose was in dropping off pressure. This isn't going to be that. This is going to be SKC trying to possess the ball. They'll sit back a little bit with the ball, but they will move the ball up while they sit back, if that makes sense. So they're not going to hold the ball in their defensive half near their keeper. They're going to move the ball up intentionally, stay near that half line, and then just hang out with the ball at times. They'll switch, they'll cross, they'll look for openings, and they'll be patient, and then they'll hit the tiki-taka passes and move it quickly down the wings. St. Louis needs to absorb that pressure. They don't need to ball watch. They don't need to get to positions where they're just watching the play unfold. They need to be following the players, making sure that they are not leaving any man uncovered, and communication with the back line is going to be key to make that happen. In addition, I think they need to be creating space in transition, looking for quick passes themselves as SKC tries to settle into a defensive posture in their counterattack. So one of the things I think St. Louis has done extremely well lately with Hartl and Leuven especially is they can possess the ball for a short amount of times and then immediately make the next pass and move correctly off of that. That's one of my favorite things, is to watch Hartl play the ball to Leuven, and then he knows where he needs to be in space, and Leuven will find him. Leverage those runs in the channels. That's how you can make SKC uncomfortable as you've now done your counterattack, but before you allow them to fully set up. You're not possessing the ball by any means. And then the last thing for me is St. Louis has to be better in their decision-making in the final third. Hackworth made some comments this week on Nukvi Thorson, saying specifically there was a play against San Jose where they could have had a goal from Klaus, but Thorson had his pass just a little behind. And I think this is probably seared, at least right now, in a lot of fans' minds, where Klaus was kind of outstretched behind him with his foot, and he couldn't turn his body to get the shot on goal. That was a pretty... It should have been a better pass. And there was another indecision by Thorson where he tried to make a back heel pass as opposed to making a forward pass. Those kinds of things, whether it's Thorson or somebody else, better decision making in the final third, and look for the open players because they will be there.
Good stuff, Matt. I am so sorry that we got to cut you off there, but let's go over our lineups really quick, and we will do a score prediction. I won't forget this time. Matt, let's start with you.
All right, I've got Roman Berkey in net, obviously. Thomas Totland, Kyle Hebert, because I don't think Nilsson will start here. I think he might be saved for the LAFC game. So Totland, Hebert, Kessler, and Horn. And then my double pivot, central midfielders, I'm going to go with JGR. I think I'm going to go with JGR until he actually shows up because I want to see more Jake Girdwood Reich. JGR and Edu Leuven. My attack, Rasmus Alm, Cedric Toyshirt, Marcel Hartl, and Klaus. With the caveat that if Toyshirt can't go, I think Hartl might slide centrally and we get Thor wide left. I would actually love to see that.
Stu, what do you think?
Yeah, mine is Berkey. I'm thinking Nerwinski gets a start, though I prefer Totland, to be honest. Hebert, Kessler, Horn, JGR, and Leuven is my pivot as well. I had Thor instead of Toykert in case I think rest him, bring him off, because also looking at our bench, we'll want a little bit of offensive subs in the second half. And I think, yeah, and then he'll start on Wednesday. Hartl and Klaus up top.
Very nice. You guys, I wish I had thought more about Hartl central because I do love it when he's central. I went Berkey, Totland, Kessler, Hebert, and I want Reed for this one. I enjoyed some of his build-up improvement once he came in. I'm not sure that's going to happen every time, but I want to attack the heck out of SKC and then hopefully put in Horn to close it down at the end if that's an option. I'm going to say 4-4-2 at this point. I got to switch over to that, and that's just because I didn't think about Hartl playing centrally, but still, this is a good option. Alm on the right, JGR and Leuven in the middle. I like that because if at the end we're a little down, it would be fun to put like Watts in and have him be a little bit more attacking. Hartl on the left, and then Betcher and Klaus up top. It's worked in the past. I think it could work again. I think the only thing I want to argue is that I think I'd rather see Betcher get in there than Thor get in there. And then positioning I'm just ignoring positioning in that case. Whereas Matt is kind of paying attention to positioning. So, it's just a couple ideas thrown out there. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I love seeing your lineups online. So please post those. You got lots of options and ideas to pull from here. And that's it from us, except for the score prediction. I didn't forget. Matt, what do you think?
I think it's going to be 3-2 St. Louis.
Stu?
I'm going to go 3-1, and I'll have a brace from Thor so he ends the season as our highest scorer.
Oh man, that would send the fan base into a tailspin.
Oh, we love it. I'm going to say 4-1 St. Louis. I think there's going to be a lot of goals in this one way or another.
Get it.
All right, that's it from us. Thank you so much for listening on the Big 550 KTRS. We are presented and sponsored by Noble Ice Vineyards. Get out there and give that stuff a try. Go take a look at the beautiful vineyard. And thanks again for listening. Enjoy the game, everybody. See you later.
Go City.
Go City.
Okay, we're out. Stu, you said you're out. You said something about Felicity, but I didn't quite read the whole comment. Sorry, I was in a hurry.
Yeah, just more sleep regression. Yeah, gain 8-2. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, more sleep. Also, I'll be up. I have in-person meetings at 7 a.m. So always
lovely.
Yeah.
Get through it because we have a party on Saturday.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I have that meeting every day, unfortunately.
Get through it this one more day.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be a fun one on Saturday. Hopefully everyone will be in line for those incredible aprons.
Dude, they look,
Yeah.
This is a fun one. I've enjoyed this.
They look nice.
Yeah.
They look nice. All right. Well, we'll be right back, folks.
Yep. See you, Stu.
All right. See you guys.
And if anybody has a chat or a question in the chat, feel free to drop it because we don't have a ton of topics. So we're just going to kind of meander a little bit and chat a little bit more SKC, talk about the U.S. national team coming to St. Louis, and think about an article that, or talk a little bit about an article that Tom Bogert wrote, I think today, about the coaching carousel in MLS. Yeah, this was a fairly recent article, so we'll get to see his thoughts on, hear from his thoughts on St. Louis as well as a few other teams. Abo, a U22 signing. You know, I told myself, it might have been last offseason, if not the transfer window this year, that I would try to stop guessing on individual players because it just makes me more sad when I get excited and hyped for this seemingly random player, like a 1 in a million. But I did like the, I can't remember who said it, it was they used filters on Transfermarkt and they were looking up 2 Bundesliga players out of contract as our short list of players to sign. So I did find that funny, and honestly, you'd probably be playing the odds if you did something like that.
Did you say we had? Did you say we had Bundesliga players that are free agents right now on our short list?
Oh no, I was saying, no, I was positive. Abo was asking about a U22 signing. Here, everyone's vote for who it would be, and I told him I swore to myself earlier this season that I would stop trying to look for specific players for a sign and say like, oh, I want this guy, or we need to bring in this guy, because
oh gosh, yeah,
the signings that Lutz is, at least while Lutz is here, and because his short list is so I don't know anybody, but I did say that I saw somebody post like a filtered Transfermarkt page that was looking at only 2 Bundesliga players that were out of contract in the transfer window as like a potential short list based on who we've been targeting. Kind of tongue in cheek, obviously, but maybe not tongue in cheek. At least if you look at the players who are represented by the same guy that now represents at least 3 or 4 of our players. Oh, it's interesting.
Chat, we need a tiebreaker here. Matt sounds all messed up to me. Does he sound messed up to you guys, like vocally?
Uh-oh.
Or is it me? Do I need to? It might be my internet.
Oh my God.
I've never asked chat a question using the phrase chat.
You sound so much like an influencer or a streamer.
Yeah, what is that?
A streamer. You sound like a streamer.
Yeah, streamer. I was trying to think of the app name.
It might be me. Hang on real quick. Let me see if I can find something. And if it's messed on that type first, I'm gonna be so pissed off because that's happened before.
Okay, it is you. I think. Yeah, you're real crackly.
Was it doing that in the first? Was it doing that in the first half?
No, it just started.
Okay, hang on.
Thanks, guys. That was helpful. There's such a delay. You guys aren't going to hear that we heard you until forever. But thank you again.
All right, how's that sound?
No, it's still there. I mean, your voice got louder. I think it's an internet thing.
Okay.
I don't think it's a sound thing.
Hang on, I'll be right back.
Oh, wait. Talking more. Talk again.
Hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay, I think it's gone now. Although you...
Hang on.
We could just do it. Yeah, do it again. I just heard it.
How do I sound now?
Great.
Any better?
That is not true, Abo. Not true at all. Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay, cool. We'd rather hear Phil. I'm fine with that.
It cannot be true.
You know, the thing that
That's a
sucks
mistake.
is Ryan Fraley. This isn't even a USB mic. It's an XLR, but my interface is USB. So
Yeah.
I tend to think that's where my problem is sometimes.
Well, remember I told you I bought a whole new unit. It was I was doing exactly that. It was like a lot of noise, or it was cutting out a lot. And I replaced my entire USB unit because it just kept happening. Now, this is the first time it's ever happened with you, so I wouldn't jump to conclusions there.
You don't think I need to drop a few $100 or a grand just for this 1 5-second clip?
Please don't do that.
I'm also not going to be singing the national anthem.
I've tried to get the cover band, my buddy, to do it. He's a great singer. It'd be fun.
At City Park?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to get him to audition.
I don't know what kind of audition process they have, but I mean, shout out to whoever picks them because it has been on fire every single time.
Yeah. Curtis Heinrich, who teaches in the Pattonville School District and interacts with us a lot on X. He's auditioned. I think he's done one somewhere, but I'm not sure. Or maybe he was offered and he couldn't do it. I can't remember.
Nice.
Might have been a 2 game or something, but
yeah, I've got a Vocaster 2. That's what I use for my interface. Ryan.
Oh, Scarlett, Ryan. That's the fancy stuff.
Scarlett. Yeah, Scarlett's like, I think that was one that I thought, no, I don't think I'm good enough to get one of those. I don't think I can justify it.
I bought kind of a fancy one. I got a Volt, but I do music stuff too. So.
Oh yeah, you multitask.
All right, well, let's get started. I'll key you in to talk about whatever else we missed on you at SKC. And
I knew it would happen too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. The thing is, like, we took, I normally don't allow it, but we took rabbit trails on like rivalry stuff. So.
Well, I teed our notes up pretty heavy with that stuff where I normally don't do that.
It's fine.
It's appropriate for this week, though. Like, I feel the stats are a little less important than everything else going on.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm going to hit record and we'll go. Welcome, everyone, to the wind down.
You know, Phil, my fridge is now stocked with Oktoberfest and pumpkin beers, but they're all bottles. So I had to dig out a Noble Ice swirl.
Hey, how nice. The pink one is my favorite.
It is a fantastic vino. Sangria, actually. It's not strictly a wine. It's a sangria. Raspberry and papaya.
I would enjoy a bottle popping, though. I think that would sound nice in a microphone, ASMR style.
I'd have to test it out. I don't know that I'd feel comfortable just going raw like that.
Should I? I think someday I should do it ASMR style. Be like, welcome everyone to the wind down.
Just get all.
Yeah. I don't have nails. I bite my nails. This is a problem. I could never make it in the ASMR world, but.
And thankfully, we are not that kind of a podcast.
I'm not good looking enough for that, I don't think. Isn't it pretty much like a girl thing to do that? I'm old, everyone. Hi, I'm 42.
It's not part of my algorithm.
We looked it up the other day, just because one of my kids didn't know what it was, and I was like, well, I haven't watched this in ages. Let's see what it's up to now. I watched like 30 seconds. I had to turn it off. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's awkward for me.
I'm with you on that. Now, Phil, I think we were going to start jumping into SKC, but I want to pivot really quick because earlier on, I honestly can't remember if this made it into the show or not, but I was talking about playing SKC so many times. I think it did. At the very beginning, we're talking about 8 games in 2 years, and that being too much. And I like playing SKC every single time I get up for it. I think, second year, we're all hyped about it, and that's not going away anytime soon. I want to point out Jerry Hayes in our chat, who said that she had her 3-year contract extension meeting today, and the rep said we play 34 league games in 2025. We pick up San Diego. We drop 1 SKC and 1 East team. So we're talking 30 teams, 15 in each conference. So we have 14 now. We pick up one in San Diego, have 15 teams. It would be 2 league matches against every team in the West, and then one less game against an East team. And I like that. I think it's a lot more balanced. It kind of takes care of my concern about playing SKC too many times here, and that's sustainable going forward. I'm not even in the mindset of thinking about San Diego yet. And so San Diego FC. And so this is a reminder to me, thank you, Jerry, that San Diego's coming in, and we'll have one less SKC game next year. So you don't know when that's going to be. Let's soak it up this weekend because it might not come till midseason next year.
Is SKC the only team we play 3 times in the season? I thought, okay. I thought we got 2 of those for some reason.
No, just SKC as because of the 14 total teams, because you only have 26 home and away in the West, and then it rounds out with 8 other games against teams in the East.
Oh, okay. So you don't think they'll take? I think they'll keep the SKC game and just have less East teams. Yeah.
Well, that not according to Jerry, who had her season ticket meeting. Now they haven't done the schedule yet or announced the schedule, but she's saying,
I misunderstood.
Yeah, she's saying the rep from City said they would have they would drop one SKC and one East team. So
okay,
you heard it here first, courtesy of our friend Jerry Hayes.
Thanks, Jerry. I mean, I like that we've played them a lot. I think it's more exciting.
Yeah. I mean, early on, only in our second year, I'm with you on that. I just don't want it to get stale.
Yeah, and 8 is a lot in 2 years. That's a ton.
Yeah, and we had the playoffs in it, but at the same time, like you look forward to playing that kind of a team in the playoffs. You look forward to probably seeing them in the Open Cup. Leagues Cup is a thing, so more games, more competitions. The opportunity to play them outside of MLS is still pretty big.
Yeah. Thanks, Jerry.
Appreciate that. Now, you want to talk a little bit more about SKC because we hopefully you enjoyed our conversation on the Big 550 KTRS portion of our show, talking about the rivalry itself. I made a intentional choice to do that because we played SKC so many times. I feel we have a little bit of an understanding on what a Peter Vermes team does, and so I found it more important to kind of put that context and build up the hype of the rivalry. But if you need a refresher, SKC is a team that typically plays 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Alan Polito is the one who usually leads the line, but don't be surprised if it's Willie Agata this weekend, with Polito having played 120 minutes on Wednesday. If it's not it's not Willie Agata, then Agata might slide in for Eric Tommy, but I think Agata is going to start. And it makes sense too, because he's their leading goal scorer. He scored 9 goals on the season, whereas Eric Tommy and Alan Polito have 7. So Willie Agata, he was on fire there earlier on in the season. Look for him to get some action starting, probably, in my opinion. We know that St. Louis is the quickest in sequence time, fewest passes per sequence. They move the ball up very direct, the most direct speed, even since the new arrivals. It's been pretty consistent. We haven't dropped off really at all in how quickly we move the ball up the field and the sequence time we have. SKC, kind of the opposite, but they have a little nuance to how they play. Like I mentioned, they do have a little bit of a propensity to press. There's the PPDA numbers. You have to go inside to really understand. You can't look at just the PPDA by itself. But SKC are the 17th quickest in sequence time, the 17th fewest passes per sequence, and the 19th fastest direct speed. So these higher numbers, meaning they're just the opposite. So they're not that quick in moving the ball up. They're not. They have a lot of passes per sequence, and they do not have a good direct speed to goal. For a direct comparison, SKC will average a little bit around 4 seconds more with the ball than St. Louis. And it might not seem like a lot, but averaged out over an entire match, 4 seconds per possession tends to be a lot, because St. Louis only averages about 7.1 seconds per possession. So SKC also likes to build up with the ball. They average almost 6 more 10-plus offensive passing sequences per game than City. And the interesting thing about that is how inefficient they are. I mentioned earlier that SKC has low-quality shots that they take. They have, per shot, a very low XG. But on these sequences, when you're looking at 10-plus offensive passing sequences, meaning they've made at least 10-plus passes in pursuit of goal while they possess the ball, moving it higher up the field, Of those types of sequences, Sporting KC is only averaging about one more direct buildup per game than City. And a direct buildup is classified as 10 plus passes per sequence that ends in a shot. So if SKC is averaging about 6 more of those types of sequences with 10 plus passes, but they're only averaging about one more that end in a shot, you can already see that they might have a lot of time with the ball, but it usually doesn't result in anything. It's horrible efficiency with the ball by KC. So this is going to be one of those games where you can defend for 80, 85, 90% of the time, but it's going to come down to those moments, whether it's a free kick, whether it's just one of those possessions where they try to beat the offside trap, for instance, the positioning of the back line that they've exposed multiple times in who's covering where, and the teamwork between Kessler and Hebert, or Kessler and Nilsson, whoever's out there, is going to be vitally important. And you're not going to notice it for large portions of the game, but when you do notice it, you're going to notice it. And that's why that stat is important, because they're not about quality. They are very much about quantity, and eventually just finding something that works, kind of wearing down your opponent in that regard.
It's interesting. I noticed that like both teams throughout the whole season, and I don't know what has changed for St. Louis, if this has changed how it looks now. And I've been feeling that way about a lot of our stats in the last several weeks. But I noticed that both St. Louis and Kansas City both kind of allow a lot of goals, or have throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's kind of why I said I think this will be a high scoring game. Like, I think this is a game where St. Louis shouldn't be happy with just one goal. I think they need to make sure they get two. Because I do think, the defense is still a work in progress. I can't remember if you or Stu said that, or maybe both of you. So, yeah, I think definitely getting 2 goals in this one. And if they haven't scored in the first half, that might be something to worry about, because SKC's defense is not the best. So,
yeah, and I go back to what Cedric Toyshirt's been doing the past couple of games. I know he's 50-50 to play, but the dude's on a 2-game streak where he scores in the first 4 minutes. I feel this team has done a really good job of starting off strong. And last week against San Jose, they held a lead, something that neither of these teams are good at. Neither team, St. Louis or Kansas City, protects a lead well. But if they get off into this kind of a start with the wear and tear that SKC dealt with, that's going to help them in the end. And they need to use this as not just a brutal match against SKC, but they need to use it as continuing to build momentum. Because while we were focused, and we still are focused on SKC, and Roman Berkey's comments speak to this exactly, you still want to use this to help the momentum grow, help continue to build towards the end of the season. Because this entire these last 5 games, starting from San Jose on, I feel is your audition of sorts for next year. Hackworth is trying to keep his job, or he's trying to win the job. You've got players that you're seeing. You could see how our 2025 lineup could be crafted already, and you'd be pretty excited about it, with Klaus, Hartl, Toyshirt, Alm, Leuven, Durkin, Horn, Kessler, Nilsson, Totland, and Berkey. Like, that is and really could be your 2025 roster. And so the opportunity to see what they have to do and earn their spots. Thomas Totland clearly has an issue with earning his spot right now. These players need to earn their spots, and this is their opportunity. Heck, right now, like this next game, Chris Durkin, let's talk about Chris Durkin for a second. Chris Durkin has been the overwhelming option A at central defensive midfield, but even he's had issues that fans and analysts have pointed out of going too high too often. He runs a lot, but is the quality of his running really what we need? Do we need him to stay back and stay within himself at the 6 a little bit more? Well, most of the time I think he does that, but he does find himself kind of moving a little bit outside of that role. With him out potentially on Saturday, this is just as much an opportunity for someone to show that they can take his role than anything, whether it's a Keel or JGR. It's that kind of thing that Jake Nerwinski did it against LA Galaxy, where he had the opportunity, he took it, had a great game, and then he wasn't able to replicate it over the next couple of games. I look for that kind of fight over these players. These players, a lot of them are locked into long-term contracts, at least long-term under club control. So they're playing for themselves to be cemented as a starter going into 2025 just as much as anything right now.
Yeah. And, I mentioned it, that we may see Kijima and or Klein in the game day roster since Toykert or
Could be both.
Indy. Yeah, right. Could be out. Even Durkin being out could get Kijima in there. So, who knows? Those guys might get some play. That's another thing. I'm not saying that ties into what you were saying, but it was something I was thinking that those guys, seeing those guys get in a game late in the season, the situation we're in, is something I wouldn't mind seeing as well. Not that I want anyone injured, but you know what I mean.
No, but it's the same conversation we had in the middle of the season where injuries present opportunities, and we didn't really have anybody take control of that opportunity. And you had players put in a rough spot. I mean, Kojima and Klein are young. You had Jay Reed, who's again young. Michael Venzel, like all these players who had opportunities. Nobody took the bull by the horns and just made themselves a must start. And that would have been asking a lot. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that anybody disappointed, but I'm saying that nobody has really had an opportunity presented and taken that over multiple games and kind of forced their way into the conversation with their on-field play in a game. The best we have really, I think, that come to mind are Jake Nowinski and Thomas Totland, where Nowinski didn't really do anything in the games outside of playing quality for City 2 and been willing to play for them. But we found out that his play in practice and training was enough to earn that spot. And so I want somebody to come in and take advantage of one of these injuries, whether it's to Toyshirt or Durkin, and say, you can't take me out of the lineup. And then they get an opportunity this year. And so suddenly you have question marks going into 2025 about who your first choice left mid is or who your first choice number 10 is, because not because you're just out of options, but because you have two high quality players that have shown over a period of time that they deserve that spot. That's the position I want to go in. I don't necessarily, I would love to go in with that projected lineup that I mentioned a few minutes ago, but I would rather go into 2025 saying this should be our lineup. But holy cow, did you see the play of Nukby Thorson down the stretch? Did you see the play of JGR down the stretch? How in the world can you leave him off? Those are the kinds of conversations I want to have going into 2025.
Yep. Speaking of performance in training, this was asked multiple times in the chat, so I want to bring it up in the wind down. We've got time today.
We do.
Ryan Freely brought it up, I think, for the second time.
Twice.
Oh, okay. He asked it the first time too. Well, anyway, asking how come there's so many knocks in training? What's up with that? So, I mean, Indy got a concussion in training. Is it Nilsson has aggravated things in training? Someone else got a pretty bad one in training. I can't think of who it is, either early this year or last year. But anyway, it's happening a lot. What's your opinion, Matt?
Klaus, I think, sprained his MCL in training, didn't he? Tomas Ostrak broke his ankle in training.
Yeah.
We've had multiple other knocks taken in training. It's, we're in the wind down. So this is the drinking game portion of the pod where I don't know though. Like, so here's the thing. We get opportunities to see training a couple days a week and it's very small. Like there's a few minutes that we get to see. And then there's the discussion parts, the presser parts. So substantive things of tactics, the media doesn't get to see. And those could be the hardest parts as far as how much the players push themselves. The drill, we see drills, we see small field things, but it is something that has to be said. Earlier on in the season, when Bradley Carnell was the coach, there was a thought that maybe this is being set by the coach of too hard of a training. Like he's encouraging players to fight for their spots, to give it their all. And so players are being reckless and this isn't well managed. And so you're seeing all these injuries occur during training. That's persisted under Hackworth. And so I tend not to, I don't really have a good answer because it's just a lot of here's the facts at hand. And you can only guess on what the exact reasonings were. But we know based on these positional battles that these players fight hard during training. right? They want to prove themselves. They do go hard. Like we see these drills. We see when they divide themselves up into 3 groups and they go at it in 7v7s or something. They go hard. Like they're fighting not just to compete and to better themselves, but they're fighting for these spots. I would be interested to see, and I don't know how you could get this data. I would be interested to see the amount of injuries that City has had in training versus other at least MLS teams. I think that would because we just have this one example, this one case study of what we're dealing with, what we're seeing here. I don't check injury reports of other teams. I don't check when injuries occurred for other teams. It's notable for us because we know all of our players. We love all of our players. But let me be completely honest here. If you were a team, if you weren't a fan of St. Louis City over the past few games at least, and you'd been watching them, you'd been seeing how they've been performing, and suddenly, and I mean zero disrespect when I say this, I'm trying to speak factually on this. If you see Indiana Vassilev show up on the injury report with a concussion, would you give it a second thought if you weren't a fan of St. Louis City? Because he hasn't really been playing a lot. He's been coming in the second half. He's been getting 20, 30 minutes off the bench. He's in a fight for his spot. He's one of those guys. But my point is that we don't have any frame of reference for other teams in their potential issues or injuries that occur from training. So we think it's a lot because we have these specific examples of when they've happened. And yeah, the Tomas Ostrak one was devastating. Like there's no other way to describe that. Devastating. But my whole point is we don't have a frame of reference for if this is bad, if this is notable, or if this is just what happens during a season.
Abo says Cardinal had them wired to grind in training. That's my guess. I was leaning the same direction. I do think this is normal on the professional level to some extent. I think a lot of players I've heard who go to top tier teams, like we're talking Premier League, like Champions League level teams, even like lower Premier League teams, are like shocked at the intensity of training. And so I think this is a normal thing for a world-class team or a team aspiring to be a world-class team. But also on top of that, as Abo said, I think we got really far on intensity last season.
We did.
Maybe further than we should have, you know what I mean? And Carnell brought that out of everybody. And maybe it never went away. Maybe it's also being nurtured under Hackworth. I'm good with it. There have been casualties. I'm sad about that. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But if they're trying to do their best and give their 110% in training and an injury happens, I think that's worth the squeeze, in my opinion. That's cruel to some extent, I suppose. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think.
Well,
in the chat.
And in Winter 83, I don't think we need a reference to know it's bad to get hurt so bad in training to miss games. But my point isn't that you're missing a game. It's the quantity.
Ostrak is the one that I think.
Yeah. Ostrak's the egregious one. Yeah. And we don't know what went into that, but we do know that was right before a bunch of different things dominoes started falling with City. Players exiting, coach exiting. Things happened in quick succession, relatively speaking, quick succession after that Ostrak injury. So there's a lot of unknowns with that. I look at the quantity because now that you've had Ostrak, I believe Klaus, I don't have my notes in front of me on when he was hurt, but and I know that you had the Indiana Vassilev concussion now. So you're seeing a series of things, but over the course of a season, you have to have a physical training. You just have to manage that as a staff, right? You can't and it's a tough balance, right? These are professionals who are at elite level, or supposed to be at elite levels of the game, and they're practicing against each other. I can't tell you how many times Roman Berkey in training has just unloaded verbally because of frustration and excitement. I mean, these players take training seriously. Yaro's had some training injuries too. Abo said, yeah. I mean, but this is my thing, is frame of reference, right? I don't know if this is abnormal. I don't have the data in front of me to say if this is abnormal. And I think that's an important distinction. You do need a frame of reference to know if knocks here and there, how many players missing a game or so because of that, is a big deal. And it's also, I think it's also an important context to say which types of players are taking these knocks. Are they players who are seasoned veterans, who are, the quality is there where they really aren't fighting for a spot, or are they players who are clearly fighting for a spot? That changes your mentality of what you're going to do in training, trying to earn roles, go outside of yourself. That has to play a factor too. There's a lot of things at play, more so than just training's too intense, or these players have to calm down. They can't keep injuring themselves. I don't know that if there's a correlation or not between the losing or missing the playoff type play and all this happening. It's just one season. We don't have enough sample size to really make any correlations like that, where we didn't have as many. I don't recall as many injuries in training last year when we were winning, but now we have a year of one thing, a year of another thing. We can start to build a little bit of a story, a little bit of a narrative after this year. It'll be something that will be interesting to watch, and we should watch it next year to see how the performance, how the positional battles, all of that relate to or correlate to injuries sustained in training.
It'd be one. If I ever, get to talk to Taylor Twellman, I think that would be number one, because I think he would be interested in speaking on that, because he cares so much about concussions.
It's a fair point.
In fact, Jerry said mandatory helmets and knee braces every training, and he has like a goofy face after that. But honestly, like, we may come to the point where we start thinking legitimately about if it's going to save an injury, if it's going to save a concussion in brain cells, maybe it's worth it. It's ridiculous, but look, the NFL's doing those crazy big helmets during practice. I think it's mandatory in practice now. It's not ridiculous if it's going to help people, if it's going to save brain cells. So that's something I'd love to hear Taylor Twellman talk about, because he could speak to the importance of that, of course, but also, like, talk to me, Taylor, about the intensity in training. Talk to me about dudes injuring each other on purpose, because I've always wanted to hear more about that. Talk to me about where it's like a good intensity that went bad. I want to hear stories about that kind of stuff. It's the kind of thing, there are so many things that we don't know how it actually goes down, because players don't really talk about it, and they don't think about the fact that we don't know what's happening. You know what I mean? There are so many things in soccer where a news thing is dropped, and all I can think about for the next 2 weeks is like, how did this happen? What was the actual scenario? Like, I want to know all the details. If there was a reality show about soccer, it would tell us all those details, and like, soccer players wouldn't realize that we care about it. You know what I mean? But I'm interested. I want to know what's going on in these situations.
Yeah, I like the comment from Elliot Mayer. Abobasi rocks the necklace blood barrier thing. That
I've been wondering what that was.
I'm not going to speak to the science of it all, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something to help with blood flow with as it relates to his head.
Wild, like concussion stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a quick Google search. I think it's called a Q collar. It increases blood flow to the brain by putting pressure on the neck, which can prevent brain injury.
Okay.
So I haven't seen anybody else wear it. I'd be curious to know its effectiveness. Yeah, Q collar is the brand name, Elliot Mayer says.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in reading more about the science on that to see how effective it would be. But every sport has their training issues. I play fantasy football, and the NFL obviously has a lot more eyes on training and
Matt,
visibility.
I've been thinking the same thing, like these concussion issues,
like
every
week. And it happens in training, it happens in games. Yeah. So like, there is a level of chance that goes on with this, and it is frustrating. None of that, all of that aside, like, none of it makes you feel better when you hear a report of it's Thursday, we have a game on Saturday, and Indiana Vassilev might be out because he has a concussion and he got it in training. Like none of that makes you feel better. But I have throughout this season tried to take a step back and not just said our training's too hard, we are abnormal.
Yeah.
Then and looked at it from a more objective lens and said these are freak things that happen. Ostrak notwithstanding, because that deserves to be in its own category based on the severity of what happened. But everything else is kind of just these players fight hard. They're encouraged to give it their all, just like they are in games. And freak things happened. We've had more injuries in games we have had in training, and players play intense in both areas. So I don't know what else we can really say on that, but
As we're talking about this, honestly, I have the football game on, the Giants Cowboys game, and this dude just gets knocked out on the sideline as we're talking about this. So just insane.
And different types of injuries in different
guys.
sports, but they're still injuries that happen of a freak nature.
Yeah.
Right. And so Vassilev could have gone up for a ball and somebody's elbow hit his head. You never know what really happens when they're fighting for a ball. Same way with Rasmus Alm when he sprained his MCL in a game. He took a knock. He took a knock to his knee from somebody else's knee that caved his in, right? And so that kind of thing, it permeates every sport, and it's just frustrating that we had been on a good run. Bringing it back full picture here, we had been on a good run. To your point earlier in the pod, Phil, of the only injuries on the report were Nielsen might have been questionable, but it's really Salio and Ostrak, season-ending injuries. Everybody else is good to go. Now you're seeing a little more wear and tear. Now you're seeing a little bit of maybe you do need to rest Marcel Hartl once. Maybe you do need to rest Cedric Toyshirt once. And I mentioned, I think, on our midweek pod that one of the things that I'm most excited about in 2025 is the increased quality of depth that will allow us to rest one of these players periodically. So I mentioned earlier my ideal quote unquote starting 11. The names I didn't mention were like Simon Betcher, Nuk Vithors, and Indiana Vassilev, Tomas Ostrak, Celio Pompeu, JGR, Kyle Hebert, Jay Reed, Jake Nerwinski, whoever else we sign in the offseason, like all of those different types of players. And I'm not saying you do a full squad rotation for a midweek game. What I'm talking about is maybe you give Marcel Hartl a game off a month. Maybe you give Cedric Toyshirt another game off a month. And so you're able to better manage minutes for players over the course of the season because you're not as worried about saying, if we rest Cedric Toyshirt, we don't have anyone near his quality. Maybe now you can plug in Indiana Vassilev, or you could plug in Tomas Ostrak and say, I'm comfortable with this. It's same winning chance, right? We still have Hartl. We still have Klaus. Ostrak's a great player. Indy's a great player. Those kinds of things are what I look forward to in 2025 because of the work that Lutz has done in 2024 to set us up for it.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that happened this season that it would have been nice to sub in different players. Now, injuries made it happen anyway, but man, we were just struggling from the get-go.
And that's the thing.
The more you struggled, like the less flexibility you have on like subbing and starting. So it's been tough. We rode players too hard, and then we paid for it. And then we got rid of 1 million players and signed 1 million new ones. So it's just like this year went off the rails in so many different ways, where winning, or at least having a lead in general, would have really helped all of those things, I think.
You almost can't fall behind the 8 ball because when you fall back, not only in the standings,
it compounds, doesn't
exactly, 100%. And that's where you start to chase things. You start to chase yourself. You start to chase others. You get outside of yourself. You force things. You have players play consistently for longer than they should without rest. And that's Roman Berkey was hurt this year. Roman Berkey had back spasms. Don't forget that. Like, we can't let that kind of a thing happen. So you have to be comfortable with a game or so to give a player a rest. That's didn't happen in the middle of the season because we were so banged up. But, I could make an argument that we got banged up because we didn't give players the appropriate rest here and there.
argument could be made. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we filled up our wind down for the night. A bit of a light night. I think we stretched our topics, and sometimes I like stretching the topics. I think it's
do
more
too.
fun that way.
Even in our first half, like I mentioned, I just felt like chatting about the rivalry.
Agreed.
Really quickly, Tom Bogert had an article on his givemesport.com website, and it's about the MLS coaching carousel. The only thing I can add for 5 seconds is that he said specifically, John Hackworth is firmly in contention to get the job, sources tell Give Me Sport. Okay. So that's kind of a positive thing to lead off with, is that while we're looking for another head coach, Danny Cruz with Louisville City is another name on the radar. We've heard his name rumored in the past. Familiarity with John Hackworth, obviously.
Also replaced John Hackworth at Louisville.
He was an assistant and took over for him. Yes.
Yeah. And so like you would think if they were looking into him that Hackworth would have been a part of that.
Yes.
But he's competing with that. This is a fun story, guys. Just start reading into it and following it. We don't have time to go into it, but it's
in the off season. In the off season, we'll connect the dots in the off season on this one before something's announced. We will, because that's a fascinating history.
Yeah. I'm glad we're not covering it too much because there's not much there yet. It's too soon.
Not yet. No, there's plenty. That'll be plenty of content in the off season.
Yep. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. It's been a fun one. Enjoyed all the comments in the chat. It was a light night, so we got to dig into the chat a little bit. It was fun. So
yeah, appreciate everybody joining in the conversation. Thank you for listening as well. It's been fun and cannot wait for this SKC game.
That's right. It's going to be a fun one. See you guys there. If you see us, say hello. I would love to chat with everybody, get your opinions on the game, and we can throw that into the conversations going forward as well. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy.